In just 6 years, France's Zag Tune has made themselves a force to be reckoned with, springboarding from global hit Miraculous Ladybug into a number of new series since. The entertainment house has kept itself busy cooking up new content and establishing themselves as one of the more presently prolific names in international kids TV. The studio's newest show, GhostForce, has started to make the rounds, including in the US, and I've certainly been looking forward to checking it out. Can this new French fare pack a punch, or is it a cartoon lacking in spirit? Let's don a dorky catchphrase and review this new show. One of the more admirable stories of international production breaking through to wide acclaim, and more importantly, insulated American audiences, Zag Tune is a production company that needs increasingly lesser and lesser introduction as its flagship project continues to speak for itself. Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir, now a co-production between 3 continents and seemingly airing on kids outlets in every country on Earth, including bouncing between 3 American ones currently residing on Disney Channel. While I personally wasn't swayed by the girl-skewing juggernaut, I did get attached to their next project, Zag Storm. Similarly an international co-production, though just France and Italy this time, and similarly thrown around in the US. Stateside stability would arrive once one of our big 3 got involved to help make their 3rd show, Power Players, in 2019. But that channel would be Cartoon Network, and thus the final product was sorely lacking, and was ultimately sent to die on Sundays. Despite the mixed record, I still had reason to believe in the French, and eagerly hoped the 4th time, GhostForce, would prove another charm. One historic global crisis later, and in October 2021, here we arrived at last, ready to explore the tale of tween heroes protecting their city from spooky foes. I would be a little happier about the end of the long wait if the show wasn't announced to premiere on Disney XD, however. The male-skewing spin-off channel, now 4 years removed from the mass content culling that left it moribund and irrelevant, has the honor of strip-premiering new episodes in weeknight evenings in what I can only see as a thinly veiled attempt at a heartless burn-off. It's something no show deserves, but it's something many an international creation has suffered from upon American arrival, assuming they make it here at all. And it's a shame that Disney has chosen to treat this show this way. And regardless of how the show is, and how I feel about Disney XD, I find such an effective burn-off unacceptable and disappointing. This could have been an important olive branch to non-girl audiences as Disney Channel tries to wash the last of the stink of the past decade off them, but instead, all we have is another damning testament to exactly what American broadcasters think of internationally produced programming. But putting aside my scheduling ire, the wait is over and I can finally check it out and review it for you. Was GhostForce worth the anticipation? We arrive in a blatantly vague New York City, and as our first single begins, we get to meet 2 of our 3 main characters, obviously color-coded in a tradition that harks to Power Rangers. Mikey, local nerd, and Liv, eventual sane girl, as they ask what's with our 3rd lead, Andy, the impulsive nominal team leader.
Finally listening to you, huh?
Spoiler alert, it's basketball! Because what else are you gonna do in New York City? See Hamilton? Work in television? Get caught in a robbery? Brave the rat-plagued subway to get back to your gentrified bedroom community in New Jersey? On the teen slice of life side of things, there's a science project to be saved, and our hero is a banana-flavored frozen dairy treat with a painfully forced pun for a name, Bananice. While they try to set up Drake as Andy's basketball rival, they also set up our Ghost McGuffin of the week, a spirit with freezing powers. Upon some thought, while the comparison isn't exact, this isn't too dissimilar to how the Akumas on Miraculous Ladybug work. They're just not emotionally connected to their victims this time and are more sort of random tropes matched to characters and set amok. Right what you know, I guess. Drake falls victim to the ghost, and the trio, mid-presentation, thaw him using 2 magnifying glasses and the same principle you can burn ants with. I had to double check we weren't heading into DI turf on this one for a second. The ghost makes itself known, and after spooking the rest of the class off, our heroes first try to defeat it in civilian guise, but once it gets a taste, and a considerable power boost from their dairy treat, they have to switch into superhero mode. Andy is Fury, Mikey is Crush, and Liv as Mist, to stop the day after tomorrow from hitting New York. Before we get ahead of ourselves, the kids contact Miss Jones, effectively the team's intelligence agent, keeping the fort down, what I guess is meant to be GhostForce's secret lair or whatever. The second single gives us slightly more of a look when we get there. She's got a bit of an exaggerated personality from this brief bit of her we see here, which is unusual compared to the cooler heads, pun intended, that we usually see taking this sort of a role. Once they get into their suits and get on with the task of chasing this banana ghost monster down, we see an acceptable level of incompetence for comic purposes. Fitting enough for teenagers, sure, but it largely relies on tropes we've seen plenty of times before. Liv having to break up Andy and Mikey's bickering in particular feel especially played out. The fight sequence itself was decently done, and the power sets on display were creative, and not what we tend to see for an American product of this genre. There were plenty of puns abound as well, so frequent at points it almost broke things, and there's even a King Kong reference in case you forgot we were in New York. There was a solid progression of the stakes to heighten a sense of danger, though given the kind of show this is, a lot of the falling action is obvious in hindsight. Through magnifying their science project to municipal scale, GhostForce defeats the banana monster. The ghost that started all this is captured in a little capsule and apparently sent back to the lab where Miss Jones is, in effectively this show's malice-going answer to de-evilizing on Miraculous. If you want to stay more private and secure online, check out NordVPN. With over 5,100 servers across 60 countries, it's easy to give all your devices fast, encrypted connections to protect your data or stream geo-blocked content. Because I know more than anyone, there's hidden gems abroad. Right now, you can get a year's subscription to NordVPN for just $5 a month. Head to bensj.tk/VPN5 for all the details. That link's also in the description. I may receive a commission if you purchase. Our second single establishes something completely different. Mikey's dad is apparently a very rich man, to the point he has a private collection he's just finished graciously lending a piece out of, an ancient pharaoh's mask, to a local museum in the city. Meanwhile, Andy is concocting a harebrained plan for Mikey to steal the cursed ancient pharaoh's mask from his dad's collection to impress a classmate he has a crush on, even though she has a crush on his superhero persona, Crush. Coincidentally, a pun. The heist works, but a before-class confiscation foils the plot. The confiscated artifact manages to activate its old curse, bringing a localized heatwave to the city. Making matters worse, once our ghost of the day reveals itself, its power is turning people into zombie-like mummies. Of course, it's time now for our heroes to act, and slide into action they do. Literally, as this is the first time we see them visit the ghost lab, they haven't officially given a cool title or anything. As with our frozen treat ghost from earlier, they managed to establish the stakes well here. The heat this ghost emanates also zaps the energy of other ghosts, and by extension our heroes, so they have to act fast. We got to see more in the way of strategy and planning from the team in this battle compared to the last, as they grapple with quickly depleting resources, and one of their own caught by the ghost. We see a few more moves from their power set as well here, chiefly Crush's new golem move, but given we lack vast amounts of context, it's hard to judge whether there's any structure to it or if they're just pulling things around with their rear ends for plot convenience. One is far worse than the other, and the ambiguity here doesn't help the show's case here. The show's second episode executes some better handled dynamics, and honestly it probably would have served as a bit of a better introduction. And that's not just because of the really great sweeping establishing shots that begin this episode. In the first segment, Andy's got a crush he'd like to ask on a date. Really playing all the romantic cards early and blatantly here, just like Miraculous. But the awkward embarrassment of overdoing it on the cologne is no match for a stinky ghost releasing foul-smelling havoc all over the city. We finally get a little more exposition as to some of the world mechanics here. Booster mode serves here as their term for Ghost's upgraded evolution version, like in a trading card game franchise. And we also get to see a little more of the lab and what happens after these ghosts are captured. They get neutralized, further proving this show is basing its battle mechanics on Miraculous Ladybug's de-evilizing but with extra steps. I particularly appreciate the second segment of this episode as its plot tackles a bit more of a complex challenge. Mikey trying to step out of the shadow of Andy and Liv and assert himself as someone who can speak up for themselves in the face of trouble. Here shown in Billy Drake trying to walk all over him over the latest school project. When a ghost that fears anything bigger than itself shrinks the class to diorama size, including both Andy and Mikey, we see some really clever strategizing on the part of Liv and Miss Jones to help them out and collectively get this ghost under control. Seeing Mikey be able to take care of a situation by himself at the end of the episode is a really strong moment of character growth, and offers a really solid payoff to finish out the episode. It seems like they've learned a few things from Miraculous that they've applied to GhostForce, and there are some things that this show does well. But overall, it's a pretty basic generic superhero show, at least going off its first few episodes. It skips a lot of the pretense and jumps right into the day-to-day business of heroics, with little thought given to fleshing out the character dynamics besides what's needed for episodic plot purposes. For anyone who's more used to hero shows with a little more character complexity, say the latter 2000s action tune boom, or even something ultimately action comedic at best like Canada and France's Atomic Puppet, you might be let down by the minimal amount of time devoted to non-frivolous character building. There are some basic tropes used as jumping off points for our trio, but initially we're not really introduced to them as full characters all that well. The big problem that plagues this show, and holds it back, is how stingy they seem to be with even the most basic elements of world building and story development. A given and a must on any series, but doubly so in the superhero niche. It shouldn't have taken it 2 whole episodes to even begin to understand any of the character dynamics, basic factoids, and their heroic process. If I had only watched the lone premiere episode on Disney XD when it first aired, I would be hard pressed to find any reason to potentially stick with it, as we're just not given enough depth into this world as viewers to connect with it or invest in it. It feels like we have to wring that sort of thing out of them, which is a bit unusual and not a position I enjoy being in with a show like this. It makes sense to withhold information on a heavier, more serialized action or mystery show to tease that there are bigger things at play or new revelations worth sticking around for. But even then, the basic world and characters have been introduced before that happens. This show fails in that area, despite being otherwise competent. I'm not objecting to a lack of an origin story here or anything like that, mind. Going that far is not necessary. But in the first episodes, one really does need to be handheld a little more while you're establishing the concept. GhostForce acts like you've already read their treatment or their pitch bible. They seem to keep introducing new concepts every episode, but don't take the time to explain them or justify why they're there, beyond mere episodic story convenience. This causes a lot of issues with communicating the plot that could have been easily resolved with a little more narrative depth up front. From a technical standpoint, there's not much to complain about. The animation is solid and things move as you'd expect. There's no issues with the 3D modeling or anything like that. The art style comes off as a little soft to me for this kind of show, though it's all certainly a creative inheritance from Miraculous, and visually pretty par for the course overall for Zag. The cutaway scenes of things like the transformation sequences, some of the bigger powers, particularly with Crush so far, and the ghost capture scenes are as strong as expected and worth the likely extra money put into them. Zagtoon's GhostForce ultimately finds itself just on the right side of alright. It's competent, but not compelling. Miraculous Ladybug viewers will find much of the same basic package they're used to, but built in a way that's more palatable to masculine demographics. The storytelling, on an episodic basis, works well, and covers a lot of ground across the trio's lives without making 11 minutes feel rushed. The overall story construction, however, is painfully weak, and chances are you'll be scratching your head over some of the details during at least the first few episodes. The show has potential to execute strongly thanks to its relatively solid creative premise, but hobbles its case by not putting in the basic effort of illustrating the details. A must for any story, even a cartoon with only 11 minutes to work with. Chances are you'd be more entertained on a different haunt. If you want more content like this, then hit subscribe for all the latest from the world of television. You can support these videos further and get exclusive bonuses for as little as $3 a month at benj.tk/join. About 2 years ago, I reviewed Zagtoon's previous series, Power Players, the one Cartoon Network had a hand in. You can watch that full review up here or down in the description. I'm Benzie Johnson Jr., I'm enthusiastic about television, and I'll see you next time.